I often say it's like all the little things that are no big deal add up to a really big deal. All the things you said yes to, or all the little mistakes, or all, it all ends up compiling into something really huge. And it had for me. And so I had written it all out and I'll never forget it. And it was like, here's your action plan to get your life back together. And it was a 180 from that point.
From Fiore Communications, it's How I Got Here, a show of inspiring stories from Tallahassee area leaders, business owners, and neighbors, all the challenges, opportunities, inspirations, the twists and turns of life that led them to where they are today. Everyone has a story worth telling, and I am really grateful that we get to bring a few of them to you. I truly have been changed by my conversations with these amazing people, and I'm confident you will be too. I'm Dave Fiore. And in this episode, I speak with Lisa Davis, owner of Image by Lisa, successful entrepreneur, and 3-time national sales leader for one of the most successful beauty companies in the world. After a dramatic and unexpected change in circumstances, Lisa had to adjust to a life without the income, rewards, and status she worked so hard to achieve. Those changes forced her to start over, leading to a second chance for marriage, balancing life and work, and resulting in the unexpected blessing of a 4th child. Lisa is now building a better and more diversified beauty and fitness empire, focusing on her faith and making the most of life's lessons to help ensure a happy and fulfilling future. We began by talking about how she would describe herself today.
Probably the first word would be entrepreneur. I'm driven. I have a business here in Tallahassee. I'm a makeup artist. I'm a licensed esthetician. I am a regional vice president with Arbonne. I am a mom of 4. I have an 18-year-old, that's Lydia, my oldest. And then I have a 16-year-old, Stephen, and a 14-year-old, Noah. And then we have a 4-year-old, and his name is Ford. And my husband travels with his business, and he's, all over the place. So my job is to be an entrepreneur and to balance mommy life and home management all in one. So in one day, it could be 1,000 different things that I'm doing, whether it's planning an event or, teaching a training. And then I fly into the pickup line to get a kid. And then I come back home and I make some calls. And then I go pick up another kid and drop somebody off there. And so I bounce back and forth a lot. I have a lot of roles. And then I also do marketing and, social media consulting for a couple companies in town. So I'm really, spread a little bit right now, but absolutely love it.
So you were born in Tallahassee, right?
Actually, I was born in Pennsylvania, in the north, and we moved to Tallahassee when I was about 13.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
okay.
My dad was a senior pastor at a church in town, and we moved for him here. We moved here for him to take that senior pastor position.
Okay.
And then I went to Florida State from there and ended up staying.
Right. So what was it like moving to Tallahassee as a 13-year-old?
Hard. I'll tell you, I was very upset for quite some time. We lived a really great life. We lived in Jacksonville before we moved to Tallahassee.
Okay.
My parents both worked, but we just had a really comfortable existence, and I loved where we were. I loved all my friends. I loved my school. So, of course, that's a really tough age to move children. And my dad took a pay cut to take a senior pastor position. So life and it changed a little bit from how we lived in Jacksonville to how we lived in Tallahassee.
Right.
Things were very tight. And so, of course, I'm in a different school, and it was a huge adjustment. Finally, I actually was, we withdrew me from school, and I homeschooled for the rest of through high school. And then I went on to college after moving here because the adjustment to the school system was so hard on me when we moved here.
What was hard about it?
The people that I was around. I was in the suburbs of Jacksonville, and I had a lot of friends, and I was with people I knew. And when we moved here, it was fights every day. The things that I was witnessing, the way that people talk to teachers, I was just appalled by all of it. things that were happening to me in the halls, even with regards to opposite sex. It was just like I would go home every day freaked out, honestly, and tell my mom, don't make me go back.
Right.
And so after about 2 semesters, she said, okay, fine, because I had begged enough. And so she kept me home and I homeschooled, actually. And then she went back to work and I kind of schooled myself, and she would grade my stuff at night, and accelerated to the point where I got through high school in a couple years and graduated from homeschooling at 16 and then went on to college. So when I graduated from college, I was 20.
Right. Was it easy for you to kind of self-motivate and get through school on your own like that?
Yeah, I think so. And maybe that laid the foundation a little bit for who I've become today. Because I guess when you asked, who are you as a person, that was I didn't know whether that meant vocation or character and how I'm wired, but I am very self-motivated. I work really hard. And I think a lot of that comes back to, one, growing up with very little, right? So if it was it was up to me and I had to make it happen, or I wasn't going to have it, period. And then Same thing with regards to school. I think it did teach me to be really self-reliant, work on my own. And then, of course, I went to college at a young age, and you have to do that because you're working independently in college too. And so I learned really quickly that you just get it done. Yeah, you don't need to have your hand held. You just take care of things.
Right. Okay, and you have a brother and a sister, right?
I do. My sister has always been pretty much an entrepreneur. She's got several children. My brother is a bachelor. He lives in the North. He has an executive job. He's a lot younger than me. And so my first child was my brother.
Right.
And I know you understand that, Dave, with all your children, because there's such a big age difference.
For sure.
He was born when I was about 12, and I turned 13 right after he was born. So basically, I raised him. And now we have the same dynamic because my daughter is almost 18 and our son is 4. He was born when she was 13, and so she's doing the same thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Learning to be a parent really early. And my sister is a year younger than I am, and we're very close to this day as well. So our family's very tight-knit. My dad, who brought us to Tallahassee, ended up, he passed away about 4 years ago, had a heart attack. And it's interesting because we've had so much illness in our family. My mom has had cancer many times. She just metastasized. She's a walking miracle. Anybody who knows my mother knows that she shouldn't be alive, and she's still with us.
Wow.
She still lives here in Tallahassee. So, they're all here.
Okay. So you finish high school and you move on to Florida State. Was there any question of going anywhere else, or did you always know you wanted to stay here and do that?
What's funny is I didn't. And I know a lot of people aspire to go other places, but my dad had made it really clear that he wanted me to stay home. And he didn't want me to go very far. So no, I stayed here. I kind of waffled for a little while after college, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. It wasn't until pretty late, or much later in life, that I really figured out what my purpose was.
Right. What was it like going to college being younger than everybody?
I didn't even think anything of it, honestly.
Really?
Yeah, because everybody was so close in age, and it really didn't matter at that point. Nobody really asked how old you were,
Right.
And you just do the same thing everybody else does.
Yeah.
Get through.
But 16 and 18, that's a difference.
Yeah. But it was hard. I didn't have the same college experience that a lot of people have. And, everybody has their different perspectives, and sometimes they're jealous of different types of people. I remember being so jealous of people who lived on campus, and their parents paid for things. Like, I had student loans, and I was working 2 jobs, and I was trying to find a place to park every day and racking up the Florida State FSU tickets on my car, because I could never find a place running to classes, trying to work and pay to live, plus going to school full time. And I really missed out, I feel like, looking back on the true college experience. But again, shaped who I am today because I'm a hardworking person and I don't accept excuses.
Right.
But back then it would have been really nice to live on campus and have a meal. And, I remember stopping at gas stations and scraping for change to put gas in my car. That was my college experience. It was a very stressful time.
Right.
I don't remember looking back on it going, oh, I had such a great time.
Right.
It just was getting through, and so that I could get a job and move on with my life.
That makes sense. What was your major?
I was a political science and history. So my plan was to go on to law school, which of course that plan changed. I met my then husband really young, was married very young, and we started having children like right away. So I'm a young mom to my older children and an old mom to my 4-year-old.
Right. So you got to experience both sides of that.
I have, yes. Yeah. It's been interesting.
Yeah. So you graduate at 20, right? And you're married at 21. So you're 21 years old, out of school. So what is life looking like for you at that point?
It was great. It was like we lived in a little love cottage and, we were trying to get by. And I had so many big dreams, though. Like I wanted to do so much that I always felt like something was sort of missing. But I stayed at home with the kids when they were young. We made the sacrifice to be able to do that. But it was, again, that was a struggle. Like, not that I wasn't used to that because not having a whole lot was how I was raised.
Right.
But I just remember there's a lot of joy from those years. My kids were back to back, 18 months apart, 3 children. So we were in the backyard all the time. They were always naked and playing and running around and screaming, and the house was always a mess. And it was a lot of joy. But for anybody who's had children that close together can also tell you it was really stressful. Like a lot of those years were just kind of like a fog. And we had one child, and still do, who's autistic and was really challenging. And I remember sometimes just crying myself to sleep because he's been so difficult and hard on us to raise. And it made it very stressful during that time. Plus the money compounded also made it difficult during that time. I remember being in the grocery store being like, wow, I didn't think that this is the way life was going to be. Like, I want to buy groceries, and get what I want and not have to think about having $100 in my budget until 2 weeks from now. So.
All right. So you've got 3 kids, right? You're busy, lots of stress that we just talked about, trying to figure all that out, and income. Money is an issue. So you start looking at income options, right? Like what can you do to contribute to the family income and make things a little bit easier? So what do you start exploring at that point?
Yeah, that's interesting. I remember the very moment that certain thoughts have hit. You can look back, and I don't remember a whole lot because my memory's starting to really go through the ages. But I remember I was in the backyard with all 3 of my little kids and thinking, what could I possibly do to bring in an income? And I researched, and I talked to all kinds of different companies. And I finally fell with, okay, it looks like MLM, direct sales, is going to be what's best for me just because it's something I can do from home. I couldn't get outside of the house because paying for childcare for all of those kids would have been a lot. And we really wanted the experience of having the kids be home in their younger years. And so again, I was looking, praying, and I was in a Bible study at the time with a friend, and I remember one day she said, I've joined this company, and they do these spa party things, and everybody comes and gets pampered, and then they have the option to purchase at the end, and I thought, that sounds really interesting. Well, that night I went home, and I'll never forget it. I had a dream that I was in that company, and I was speaking in front of thousands of people, like at a conference or a convention or something. And my mom always said, you always had dreams like that. You had a dream that we had your baby brother before we even had him, But I remember the dream, and something was inspired in me. It sparked in me. It took some time. I went to her first party. I was her very first consultant that joined. Of course, everybody who was there, including my best friend, was like, oh my God, you're so stupid. I can't believe you're doing this. You're so busy. Because of course, my mom was still sick with cancer, still is till this day.
Right.
We had so many responsibilities there and with the kids and everything. But I was like, you know what? Something felt right to me about that company because I also felt like I was giving back to people because I was able to give women something that they don't do very well naturally once we have children, especially when you don't, your time's your own. But
the priorities become different.
Yeah, that's exactly. Right. So I was able to pamper women while making a good part-time income. So I joined this company, and things started to change in our home pretty quickly after that decision. I was still home with the kids, but I was going out at night and doing these spa parties, 1 or 2 a night or a week. And it just, looking back, it's like $500 a month was like life-changing. That meant more groceries. That meant we had to eat out once in a while. We could go on a date because when you're really limited financially, which I totally understand, even to this day when people tell me, oh, I can't afford that, I'm like, totally get it. You know what I mean? Like, I have a very intimate knowledge of what it feels like to be completely broke. And so I just worked my business and grew with that company for quite a long time.
So we can name the company, right?
We can. They've gone out of business,
Right.
which is a whole nother story, I guess.
Right.
But,
We'll get to that.
okay.
Right.
Yes.
But the company's Beauty Control.
That's right.
And you became a consultant, and you were pretty darn good at it, right? Safe to say.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I loved it. I found that I was a natural teacher and my whole sales method throughout my entire career within this industry has been to educate. So I'm not a real big hype person. I'm like, oh, you have to have it because I love it. It's more like, well, what's it do? And why does it work? And what are the active ingredients that'll help you? And why is it important?
Right.
Why is self-care important? All of those things I found were my strength in teaching women. So they felt like a lot of times they didn't just go to a spa party. They went to a class where they learned about what were the best things to do for themselves. And it didn't matter whether it was beauty control or something else. I tended to be very honest and still am about what works and what doesn't. If my company has something that I don't like, I don't sell it, period.
Right.
And that honesty also helped propel my business. So I went, I was a consultant and it took me about 2 years to get to the level of director.
And what does that mean, a level of director?
It's like basically you have a certain amount of sales volume that's coming in, and you have a large team. And, I would say probably 200 people on my team at that point. You're making more of a full-time income, $5,000, $6,000 a month. You're able to replace an income, basically. So I was home with the kids plus making a full-time income, which comes with other little challenges. But I enjoyed that because I'm a good multitasker. So it was, kids, nap time, beauty control.
Right. So what did it take in that relatively short amount of time to build a team like that?
The first thing is I was always consistent. Whatever the action plans were, I was stuck to the action plans. If they said you need to do 2 parties a week, that's what I did.
Okay.
And I never wavered from that. I think a lot of people come into this industry think that it's going to be easy. You know what I mean? And it's definitely not. You really have to put in the activities. And I always put in those activities. And then I always shared it every time I could, the opportunity. Never shoved it down people's throat. I never was that person that was like, and still am, where I'm going to bring up what I do and try to recruit everybody. This isn't for everybody. But I would share it at every single party that I did. And also, I'm a really big proponent of sharing belief in others. So if I think somebody would be good at it, I will absolutely tell them. If I don't, I will not say a thing. So if I met somebody and I thought, man, they're really great, I'd love to work with them, I tell them, hey, I think you'd be really great at this. I'll help you. I think you should think about it. That's it. I don't try to pressure people into doing something right away. And I think that resonated with people, that I wasn't the typical, and I posted that on social just the other night. I'm not the typical, going to shove it down your throat. I'm going to plant those seeds, let you come alongside with me, and then I'll cultivate and help you from there. And then that's what I did. And I would go into that teacher role again by teaching my team how to do what I was doing. And that's something that is a strength. Even now, I teach them how to do exactly what I do. So I'm duplicating myself.
Right. You're obviously, when you're having the parties, you're selling more than products, right? You're selling confidence, you're selling self-worth. What is that dynamic like? How does that work?
That's a huge part of it, because you're giving women a permission to take care of themselves and that it's okay, especially when there's certain seasons of life, which I think is key. So for me, again, it comes back to education. Just this one simple step, this one ingredient, let's take, and now it's even more broad than that. I mean, it was very spa, skincare. Then it evolved into makeup, and I became a makeup artist. Then I became a professional makeup artist. Then I became licensed, and all of that accelerated from there.
I want to step back a little bit and ask you, okay, you were doing really well with beauty control. Your team was building, you were rising through the ranks. Just tell me what that world was like, because I have a sense that it wasn't just the money. You were getting a lot of intangibles from that. I mean, the recognition, the prestige of it. Just kind of give us a little insight into that world as a really successful consultant with beauty control.
Yeah, I don't think people understand from the outside how encompassing, I guess, it gets. And I guess they can, because sometimes they see these types of things as cultish, which I totally understand. I totally do. Because there's such an empowerment culture that comes along with what we do. But what happened and ended up happening is I went from director grew in about 1 year's period after that from director to senior executive director, promoting 10 of myself, 10 of leaders. And then overall promoting 22 directors total, doing over $100,000 in sales volume a month, $1 million that year, which is a lot in makeup. So this is not cars or computers. These are lipsticks.
Right. That's a lot of lipstick.
These are lipsticks. And, I was just doing my thing. Honestly, I still do. It's just like I'm just being consistent with my activities. I never really thought too much about it or why I had been successful or anything until I started going to the national conferences. And I remember one national conference seeing people look over at me and whisper, or just I overheard somebody say, "Oh my God, there's Lisa Davis," and I was like, whoa, what's that all, because that's what happens in the industry. Once you go to the top, you kind of become the it girl, and that comes and goes, trust me, but I became that it girl in that company, and it propelled me to a local fame, but also an MLM within the industry position, of influence. Went on to become, I was on the President's Council and took all the trips. Like you're saying, the nice thing about being in sales, not just in MLM or direct selling, but in any sales position. I know a lot of girls in town who are sales reps for all kinds of different companies. There's trips and cars. And I mean, it's just
incentives is part of the deal.
It's in part of the deal. And that's one of the beauties of being in sales. I'm in sales just like anybody else is in sales. And my methods are probably pretty much the same as anybody else in this position. But I looked around after about 10 years in the company. I had everything in my home was my company's. I had earned every television, every Xbox, Wii's. I mean, my cars were all from my company. Every piece of jewelry that I own. I mean, I was just dripping in jewelry. It was
big jewelry.
I'm talking, big jewelry. Number one in the company for 3 years in a row. We're talking massive pieces of diamond jewelry.
Right.
Which there's a whole nother story coming with that.
Yes.
It was amazing because I remember, one of the best things about it, Dave, was we were also able to give so much.
Right.
Our church was going through a building campaign during that time. And I remember thinking, I can't even believe we're giving this much money. It's like a house payment plus some, But it was a blessing because God had provided that and we were giving it back. And I never even thought anything of that either. And as God gives, and God takes away, as we see, but so we were able to give. But also I remember one day I was turning into Walmart and I was thinking, wow, I just made what most people make in a year in 1 month. I could buy anything I want today at Walmart. And that was a huge moment because I'm coming from nothing, nothing, And, I had worked my way through college.
Did that make you feel weird or guilty in some way?
No, not at all. You know why? Because we live in America.
Yeah.
And because we live in a country that we are blessed to be able to work hard and achieve the American dream. And when you work your butt off, because that's what I was doing, I was working my butt off, then you get rewarded for it. And the nice thing about this business, especially MLMs, is that anybody can do it. Anybody can do this. I firmly believe that if they put the work in, that anybody can achieve this. And many girls on my team were. They were earning cars and trips and jewelry, and everybody was doing great. And
how did it make you feel to see your team accomplish so much?
Well, that was where the beauty comes in, because that's where you're seeing basically your children do well. And we all want to see our children really become amazing human beings. So it's kind of like that in the business. Like when people grow and they start earning things and they start being the ones asked to speak at conferences and travel the world, it's like, the proudest mama on the planet. And so I absolutely loved that. And I love that still, to see other people be empowered to take back, whether it means just a little breathing room or life-changing income. That's really cool to watch.
Right. Yeah. It's awesome. All right. So outwardly, you're doing great, making tons of money, helping other women, experiencing a meteoric rise to national prominence in your field. But you have said that you let a lot fall through the cracks during that period.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
Now looking back, because I've gotten, I don't want to skip ahead. Okay. The kids were doing great. My marriage was suffering. We really struggled there, and we finally ended in divorce. I don't know that my children were really falling through the cracks as much, because one of the beauties of what I do is that I have been so flexible.
Right.
But there were things missing. They weren't getting the attention they need. But mostly, I was so focused on what I was doing that I became what I did. My identity was completely wrapped up in who I was as this mogul, this beauty mogul.
Right.
And now I see how damaging that was, because when I lost it, I lost everything. During that time.
Right. So 2013 was a rough year, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
To say the least.
You could say that. Actually, it was a series. It began a series of rough years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we talked about your big jewelry, but your ownership of that did not end the way you planned, right? As things got tough, the company's in decline. You're divorced. You're now a single mom.
Right.
You're back. You still have things and money, but not. Your life has changed.
Yes.
Your situation has changed. So tell me how you dealt with that.
Well, I guess the divorce happened first, and I was dealing with the single mom thing. Our autistic son was way worse during that time, which was very stressful. And having two incomes that are great, but then going to one income that's okay, was a little of an adjustment.
Right.
Then my mother moved back in with me. My dad had passed. My dad passed away right after the divorce. And my mom moved in with me, so that was another person I was taking care of. And my mom is self-sufficient, but she is permanently disabled from multiple cancers that have spread. She lives a very bad quality of life, I would say. And so she was living with me, then the kids, and that was a huge adjustment. I was also dealing with the loss of relationship, my ex, and then I had gotten involved with somebody else that was terrible. It was just terrible. The whole situation was bad. I experienced my first depression ever. I've never been depressed. I never had an issue with that. I thought, looking from the outside, you always look at people and go, just perk up, get over it and just move.
Right.
Just do what you got to do.
Right.
But I was dealing with emotional, just trauma through all of it. And the company was declining. It was getting to the point where every month things went down. And because of what was happening, the morale within the company started to decline, and we were recruiting less, we were selling less. Things in the industry were changing. I don't know if you've noticed, but people don't do parties anymore.
Right.
Not
that I went to a lot of them
right,
before.
Exactly,
but,
Dave.
yeah.
I know, but things changed there too.
Sure.
And finally, it got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to have to get a full-time job on top of what I'm doing with beauty control and single mom and my mother and all of this. I got a job. To pay the bills, because my mom couldn't contribute at all, of course.
And what was the job?
It was a full-time sales position here in Tallahassee,
Okay.
which was great. But again, here I am traveling all over for that job, traveling all over for beauty control, trying to maintain beauty control full-time while being a single mom and with the trauma of everything that had gone on. And I'll never forget it. One day I was working that job and I got the call from my mom that the sheriff's department was at my dad's house, and I knew right then, that was it. And my dad was gone. He had been gone for 4 days, and we didn't know. And, we drove over there, and that was it. And the cool part about that whole time, though, I have to tell you, though, is that even though I was really slipping and things were not going well and income was down, I have never once asked my parents for money, ever, not once, my whole life. But that month prior, I called my dad and I said, Dad, we need some money to pay the rent. I paid all the other bills. I'm just a little short. And he met me at a McDonald's and he looked terrible. He had had shingles. He had been sick. He had become very much a loner. I don't know if he had maybe a friend in the planet,
Right.
And he looked just bad. He was sweating. He was red. And we sat there and we had lunch and we talked. And I was like, gosh, he just looks bad.
Yeah.
But he gave me cash that day to pay our rent. And I'm so glad, that I asked him for that money. And he gave it so willingly. He didn't even ask. But the next month he was gone, and I was the last person in the family who had seen him. And I was the last person who had talked to him. And I still have a voicemail on my phone from him 5 years ago, And it's, hey, babe, just wanted to see how your new job's going. And I still have it now on my computer, and It's
Yeah.
just, it's awesome to know that I got to, in that vulnerability
Right.
came a great moment.
And
So
he got to show you some love in a really tangible way.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So I'm glad. So he passed. The week after that, I remember thinking, this situation, this whole thing is not what my dad would want. Just the relationship that I'm in, this trauma that I'm experiencing with this person and this lifestyle is just, it isn't what my dad would want. And I was able to really take a 180 after that and just walk away from all of it. I walked away from the relationship. I walked away from that full-time job. And I said, I'm going to ride this out with Beauty Control until they end and whatever. And I actually made an action plan at that point. My mom bought in a condo. I moved her out. I started to go, okay, what do you need to do, Lisa, to take care of you and to make sure that you maintain sanity during this season?
Right.
And that was all part of it.
The same thing you tell your clients and your team, right?
But sometimes it happens so slowly, you don't even realize that this destruction's unfolding.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then you look back and you're like, oh gosh, all those little...
How did I get here?
Yeah,
Right.
and I often say it's like all the little things that are no big deal add up to a really big deal. All the things you said yes to, or all the little mistakes, or all, it all ends up compiling into something really huge. And it had for me. And so I had written it all out and I'll never forget it. And it was like, here's your action plan to get your life back together. And it was a 180 from that point.
Hey everybody, just wanted to take a quick break to tell you about the Tallahassee Love Book, featuring 101 ways to love local. It's full of places to eat, shop, and play, services that make your life better, and even podcasts that connect you with local people. You can find them in businesses and offices all over town. There's also a Facebook group where these businesses are sharing their appreciation for you, offering various perks and prizes. The group is called TLH Lovebook Insiders. Check it out on Facebook today. But I did want to ask, in addition to the money and your kind of life being turned upside down, you're also missing the adoration and the praise of people, some who you love and care about, your team and other people you don't know. But that's, even if you're not fed by ego, that's still different, right? That's still a change where if you're not the it girl anymore, how did you deal with that?
I think at that point I had gotten used to not being the it girl.
Because of the decline of the company overall?
Yes, and I had tried to maintain a humility through all of that, meaning I still always stopped and talked to anybody who wanted to talk. And, I tried to maintain some sort of humility. I think once the company finally declined, if you want me to kind of get there with, I can tell you kind of what happened. I think more of it was losing a sense of purpose for me because I was in that role of mentor, teacher, almost like hard to say for my team. I was that motherly role.
Right.
That's what was difficult. And you don't know it until it's gone. So I got, first I need to back up, I guess, and say that after I made that 180 shift, 2 weeks after my dad passed away. I mean, this is all really fast, but this all went down within like a 2-year period. I took my mom to go swimming after my dad had passed away. And I took the kids and I was like, let's just go do something fun. And we went to the pool at my mom's condo.
Right.
And I walked in and saw my husband for the first time. My new husband.
Stafford.
Stafford. We've been married for 5 years. And
so what was your initial impression of him?
I've never seen anybody more beautiful in my whole life, honestly. That was my first impression. So of course it was attraction, but then my second thought was, do not look at him and do not look in his direction, period, this whole time that you're here.
Right.
Because that is the last thing you need
to
right
give
now.
him any idea that you're interested.
No, I don't need any of that in my life. Like I was totally fine with moving forward, just me and the kids. I had just gotten out of a terrible situation.
Right. You don't want pool guy giving you a call,
I did not
right?
need pool guy. And pool guy was really hot. So of course he's going to be a player, right? And so I didn't talk to him. He found me about 5 days later, I got a text message from somebody who he talked to somebody who talked to somebody
Right.
trying to hunt me down, I guess.
So your plan didn't work.
No. And he says that he was I'm the first woman he ever pursued. Like, he saw me at the pool and he was like, that was it for him. And I guess it was it for me too,
Yeah, I
because,
guess so.
but I had decided I wasn't going to. So we ended up going out, being set up by the people that lived at this condo. It was it. Love at first sight. Like, we were in just inseparable from that point. Come in Ford Davis. All right. So
Right.
then 2 months later, I found out I was pregnant with our son.
Right.
Again, shocker of all shocks. We didn't know each other very well. I had 3 children, all of this. So that's a whole nother story, but it's been a huge blessing to have another child at this age. I was a geriatric pregnancy, and Ford is, his name's Ford. He's the cutest thing ever. And he's brought such joy to our whole family. In fact, the teenagers, our older kids, just absolutely love him. It's like their parents. And
Right.
so there's, that was a huge adjustment. But again, I felt like, well, this is where we're at. I am a Christian. I have certain core values that there will not be broken.
Right.
And so I went forward, and we had Ford, and we ended up getting married like 4 months later. So it was really, really fast and furious, just love.
Right.
And I'm super grateful because Stafford is like the perfect other half of me. He's wonderful, wonderful man. He can explain anything. He's very patient. Everything that I'm not, he is, and everything that he is, and I am. And so It's been a wonderful journey. But here we are, newlyweds, have a new baby, and my income is continuing to decline, and I am freaking out. And I'm getting to know this new husband. I'm still dealing with the trauma of losing my dad, because all of this has happened really fast, and my mother, and the situation with that, because that's been ongoing. My family and I have always struggled with Mom and her cancer and all of that.
Right.
So I get a call, and I'll never forget. It was in August. We were all supposed to be flying to Dallas, and I was like determined to make this happen. I was going down with the sinking ships,
Right.
And they called us and told us that we weren't to fly out, that we were to cancel our flights. So we all canceled our flights, and then they got us on a call the next day and said, we're sorry to inform you, that we're disbanding the company. We're liquidating the company, and we're talking 50,000 consultants, hundreds of home office. The company was owned by a company head, I don't even know if I should mention, that had bought us out, and it just mismanaged. And what happened?
I think we can say that.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. We had been bought out by Tupperware.
Right.
Tupperware ended up liquidating us for tax purposes. Then they ended up selling our information to other companies. It was just what ensued was a complete civil war within the industry, within our industry too, because then some decided to start their own company and try to recruit everybody. Some of the big leaders went to other big companies and
I saw when I was researching it, I Googled it. I saw there was another company who was saying all the beauty control people come over here and be part of this.
That's right.
Like the brand was living on in another company.
Exactly. Yes. Which was so traumatic for us, because here we're fired. We were fired. Our teams were taken away. Our cars were gone. Our income was gone. But then they sold the rights to our information to another company and all the formulas to another company. And then that company tried to pursue us to recruit us back into the same model, which was like,
Yeah, why would we do that?
Yeah, exactly. Why would we ever do that? And then the CEO of our company actually started another company on his own within 6 months. I mean, he sprang it up fast. And under the guise of loyalty, right, tried to bring everybody under his fold so that he could grow his own brand, which a lot went there. And then the rest of us scrambled, especially the top leaders. It was like, find a company and bring all your people over. And everybody,
before they get all split up.
That's right. Everybody was scrambling to grab up who they could. And there were a lot of hurt feelings because, disloyalty, we didn't keep the same rankings. We didn't keep the same structures. And then all of a sudden people weren't returning your phone calls, and your team was MIA, and nobody would tell you what they were doing. And there were some who would say, hey, I've decided to do this, and I would bless it, because who am I? At least they were honest. I'm a nobody at this point, And because of all the hurt and the civil war that went on within the industry, and all the industries trying to scoop us all up, and constant messaging, and presidents of companies calling us and flying us out to all these different places because they wanted the top girls.
Right.
Because if they got us top girls, they got everybody underneath us.
Sure, made sense.
But it was so hurtful. I just stepped back from all of it. I just couldn't have any part of it for about 2 years. I said, I'll just try it all and just play around with things. And I lived broke again. I went back to just ground zero. And those were the humbling years again. That's why I say I understand where people are at when they've lost everything. I was married, but again, it's a new marriage. I didn't want to ask my new husband for help. And I certainly didn't want to tell him that I had $100 in my account. So I was in a position where I was selling things, pawning off my jewelry, selling my car. Anything I could do to get by is what I did during that time. Now, thankfully, I am a professional makeup artist and was before beauty control ended.
Right.
So I had that income. But what people don't realize is professional makeup artists, hairstylists, estheticians, we make good money, but you have no idea what we make in comparison in MLMs. It's just 4 times, 5 times as much.
Right.
And so I was used to living on a certain level, and I had to go down to a very minimal with all these children and trying to run a home and trying to pay for my half of the bills, you know.
Right.
And it affected our marriage too, because I felt like, well, gosh, I had all these things I brought to the relationship.
You've had a lot to offer before.
Exactly. And I have nothing to offer now. And so it affected our relationship. We definitely had some things we had to overcome during those years. But also, that's one of my biggest weaknesses. I don't ask for help. I do not ask, and especially not for money, and I never will. And I still don't.
Right. And your side hustle, Image by Lisa,
yes,
right, turned into a full-time job, and you continue. We're going to get to your next step with direct selling in a minute, but during this period, it provided a good income, and it's still something that you continue today. So tell me about the professional makeup artistry and everything related to Image by Lisa.
Well, I really learned as my company declined that you have to brand yourself, never your company. It's always about people are buying from you, not a company.
Right.
And so that trust has to be there. And the way that the trust is built is through giving value to people. And so about 3 years before Beauty Control declined, I started doing more tutorials, videos, teaching classes to try and help women learn how to do their makeup or learn how to dress right for their complexion or, anything image is where my specialty is. And so that built my brand.
Right.
And it did give me 2 legs to stand on, or I would have been really in a bad position when Beauty Control closed. But I continued to do that through those times. I did Makeup Tip Monday every Monday on my page. You can follow me on all my social platforms. And I do lots of tutorials and teaching, anything regarding image. Now that's gotten even bigger. It's expanded through the years. But Image by Lisa is the umbrella under which all of the different topics that I cover fall under. Okay.
So you took a break after Beauty Control and you basically took a time out, right? And rather than rushing into something else, you said, I'm going to look at all my options. So tell me about that process and where you ended up.
Well, I felt like what happened is so many people rushed into a decision. They didn't really have time to try everything. And I had done that with Beauty Control. I joined them and I thought, oh, they're the best. If you use anything else, you're just, you're not using the best. Well, how did I know? I'd never tried any of the other brands. I'd never been in their back office or looked at their branding or their compensation plan or their discount structure. So I felt like this time I needed to really study things and be educated about the choice that I made instead of just jumping in like a lot of other people had. And they still, I'm looking at them going, oh, they're like, oh, this is the best. And they're selling their, whatever it is. Right. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I've tried yours, but I've tried some others too. So I joined about 12 different product lines and I just played. And my whole mission was to do reviews because I do have a YouTube channel and I put a lot of content out there. And I thought I'll just talk about some of these lines and what they're good at and what they're not good at. But I studied them, man. I'd studied comp plans and back office and branding, marketing, missions, all of that because I wasn't a novice to the industry anymore. I was a pro in the industry. And so I knew what to look for. And I was really sensitive to red flags. If one popped up, I was like, you're out, And so I quickly minimized all the companies down to about 3. And I just kind of toyed around with the 3, right? All at the same time. I kind of sold a little bit of each one. I didn't really recruit. I was just like, I'm just going to play around and play with these things. And then in December of 2018, I really felt like God was moving on my heart that I was supposed to get back into the industry. I was doing a lot of me work. I was in Bible studies and just spending time just growing who I was as a person again, independent of any company, right? And I was like, you know what? It's time. It's time, and I think I know where I'm supposed to go. And I feel like God confirmed it in so many different ways. It was like, okay, yeah, I hear you. All right, fine, And then in 2019, January 1st, I had a job offer. I do marketing and consulting for another business owner here in town who does a great job. We work really well together on his business. And then several others, like I consult with them to just kind of help them grow their brand because I'm all about marketing and branding.
You can give them a little plug if you want to.
Okay, yeah. So my friends over at Island Wing Company, and that's funny because people always think that Sam and I are married. We're not married. Stafford's my husband. Christine's his girlfriend. But we're very good friends. And when he started Tropical Smoothies here in town. And then he, of course, started Island Wings. I came on board with him to consult with like marketing, social media, that types of thing. And we have grown that platform huge over the last few years. And I've loved it. We've had such a great time doing it, together. Yeah. And I'm super proud of him and what he's accomplished there. So their corporate head wanted to bring me on full time in marketing. And I was like, it was such great money. It was travel. It was basically what I loved doing, which is marketing, branding, all that stuff, social media. And I knew that wasn't what I was supposed to do. Like, I just knew that I had this other thing and I had my real estate license. And I always knew that but is that what I'm passionate about? I love image. I love helping people figure out their colors and, all of that stuff is what I really am passionate about. Plus I am so spoiled by the industry's flexibility. Honestly. I mean, I work when I want. I'm going from here to pick up a kid and take that kid there and then take this kid there and then I'm delivering that one and dropping this one and then coming back. And then I'll work for a couple hours and then I'll put one to bed, so. And
a regular job just doesn't let you do that.
You cannot do that. And so because I've grown so spoiled by that flexibility, I knew at that point I had a decision to make and I knew my husband really wanted me to kind of go with the full time, and I was like, oh, I'm going to have to disappoint so many people, And I turned down that job and I said, I'm going to go with this company that I had decided on. And I started on January 1st of 2019.
And who did you start with?
I had joined Arbonne and started with Arbonne. And I had joined them and the 12 others, but I found that I was continuing to use their products.
Right.
And I kind of fell in love with just a lot about the company. This, the mission, the pure health and,
And it's broader than just image, right?
It is.
Makeup.
It's interesting because I came to all of the companies from an esthetician, makeup artist background, looking at their makeup and skincare primarily. I wanted individualized skincare and certain colors and certain coverage, and I was really picky about all of that. And I found that with Arbonne, but I found later that most people come into Arbonne for the nutrition part. 95% come to the nutrition part, but I tend to sell all of it, but most teams mostly are nutrition. But I fell in love with the nutritional aspect. And so I ended up going in that way as, encompassing nutrition and exercise and all of that as part of my brand because it was already part of who I was as a person. So it enabled me to just kind of go a little bit further with all of it.
So how's it going with Arbonne?
Good. I gave a speech. That's funny that same month I was asked to speak at a cosmetology school here in town. And I gave a speech and I said, I have a word for every year. And I said, 2019 is going to be my resurgence. And it was, from January, took me 6 months to become the same level that I was when I was new to our, beauty control. Right. Basically like a regional vice president is what they call it here. I earned the white Mercedes SUV that I have outside. And within 6 months, grew a team up to, several hundred in really fast time. But a lot of those girls are, again, all my old, it wasn't a lot of Tallahassee. I'm actually, because I had grown that network nationwide within the direct selling community, a lot of people were waiting, I found, to find, like, what is she going to do? Okay. And then as soon as I did it, they were like, okay, let's do it. So
they were ready to jump on board.
Yeah, because, I think that, and most of them have told me it's because we knew you had done the research. But I am not so wrapped up in who I am with this company.
That was my next question. This is, the second time around, how are you guarding yourself against some of the traps that you may have fallen into the first time?
I think that happens in marriage too, right? Because now I'm married a second time. I'm having to do the same thing there,
Right.
but like not make a lot of those same mistakes again. I find that I'm more removed. I'm not moved by the emotion of things as much. Even this year, because of COVID, the national conference was canceled. We didn't get to go. I've never been to a national conference. And when I go next year, I might be a national, I don't even care. And I know my upline was probably like, well, didn't you want to get your jewelry and walk stage? And I'm like, not really. I don't care. I just, the recognition means nothing to me anymore.
It's not going to be who you are again.
Right. No. And all of the accolades even, I really don't even care about any of that anymore.
For those who haven't seen it, those are major productions. I mean,
it's insane, isn't it?
I've seen the video.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen you.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes,
from the videos, because they're really, really well done and very glamorous, and
Yep.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal, and I mean, there were 80,000 people registered for this last one.
Wow,
80,000 people, and and it fills the stadium, and they have renowned speakers from all over the world there. It's really cool. But I use all types of brands in my makeup case. I still recommend other products. I praise other companies for the products that they do well.
Right.
Arbonne's not the end-all be-all for me or for anybody. Not any woman is going to use all one product in their makeup case.
Okay, I do want to ask you this, that I know you get a lot of satisfaction from the consulting and the sales and the team building, but I also know that you enjoy the makeup, the artistry of that, the actual application of makeup and transforming a face, for a special event or whatever that is. I know you do the makeup for the First Lady of Florida. So kind of tell me what satisfaction you get from that, and why do you still, with everything else that's going on, why do you enjoy sitting in front of a woman and applying makeup for a special day?
That is a really good question. In fact, my husband always will ask, like, how long are you going to do this? Because your income with Arbonne is at the point where
you don't have to do this.
No, you don't have to do anything else anymore,
right?
But I love it. Like, honestly, it's so crazy because I'm very type A. I'm very analytical and organized. But on the other side, I have this artsy-fartsy side.
Right.
And doing makeup is very relaxing. It's a release I don't have to think. And I think that's part of it. I'm super busy during the week. I'm flying from one thing to the next. I'm in work role, and then I'm in mom role. And when I do makeup, like when I go be with a bride on a Saturday, I can just be quiet, listen to them laughing, drinking champagne, and I'm making women gorgeous.
Right.
And I don't have to think. And I think I've told him that. I'm like, it's just mindless for me. I have an assistant. She sets everything up for me. All of my appointments, all the bridal stuff's taken care of. And she just tells me where to go. I just show up and I put makeup on people.
You get to paint your picture, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love it. And the same thing with, I don't take a ton of appointments during the week. I do some lessons, but like politicians, the First Lady, the Secretary of State, those types I'll do during the week for different things. But I also love to be with them. That's another part. It's like, there's such a connection when they're in your chair. Like, a lot of these people, they're my friends, and like we talk about stuff and we shoot it, we're just like, whatever, we just laugh and have a good time. And so I think that's why it's mindless for me. Right. It's fun, it's connection. And so I think I'll continue to do it. And I've gotten to the point where I raise my prices and I have my minimums high enough where I make it where it's worthwhile to leave the house. Right. And if it's not, then I just say no. And I've gotten to the point where in my life where I don't feel bad about that either. Like if somebody says, well, hey, can you, and it doesn't matter who it is. Right. A politician very high ranking politician could ask if I'm available. And if I have to go do my workout, I say no. Because my workout, I've just gotten to the point where I'm like, I know how important it is, self-care, and certain things I prioritize better than I used to. Yeah. So,
all right, I don't want to leave without talking about a long-term and deep passion for you, and that is protecting unborn life. That you have used your influence over the years to bring attention to the issue, and specifically supporting a women's pregnancy center here in Tallahassee. Tell me why that's important to you.
I think it comes back to when I was a child, honestly. And I was just thinking about this the other day. I can't believe you even asked the question, but I was watching the Miss America pageant, and they asked one of the contestants during the question and answer part about her position on things. And I remember I was really young, and I asked my mom, I was like, what is that? And she explained it to me, and I was like, oh, I was struck at that moment, and I'll never forget it. And about what the real issue is. Because really, when it comes down to it, there's a lot of rhetoric. And I hear it all the time. There's a lot of rhetoric. Oh, you don't care about the born, all this, just these things that distract from the real issue. The real issue is it life and is it human? And the question is, and the answer is yes, it is. And do you believe that God makes mistakes, Right. And so then my dad went on, of course, he took that senior pastor position, and he became very involved with the movement. And he, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but he would do a memorial each year with small white crosses in the church, where we would memorialize the lives of unborn. And that, it moved me, of course, and I came to understand the issues more. Well, then, even during that 2 years where I told you I was broke and at home and in Bible studies and just really exploring things more, I knew that, and I felt impressed that if I was to have the same level of success within any industry again that I had again with beauty control, that I felt like God was calling me to use my resources in that way. And so God and I had an arrangement that
it's always good to have an arrangement with God. We
had an arrangement.
Right?
Like, I really felt like this is what he wanted me to do. So half of my retail sales goes straight to the Women's Pregnancy Center. And sometimes that's really tough to do because those numbers are getting big. But I know that God's blessed my business, and that's why I just give it. But I really feel strongly, even having been through a crisis pregnancy, that if women know that they have the resources available to them in material needs, adoption services, people who really do care, love them, want to come alongside them, pray with them, all the services are there for them. And most women have no clue that those things are available to them. I hear that rhetoric that, you just care about the unborn, not the born. And that's really not true. Right. I don't know if once you see the community, especially within Tallahassee, that loves babies and loves mamas at the same time.
It's not just about the baby being born. There's care for both.
There's care for both. And it's overwhelming. And there's so much love in the community too. It's not about coming down on anybody or saying, oh, you're wrong or you're bad, or even women who are post-abortive, who are friends and family of mine. There's no judgment there. There's no judgment there. God loves you just the same. In this community, same thing. But we want to make it known to women, especially in our community, that there is a support network there. There is services there. You don't have to go to one place that's only going to give you one option. I can guarantee you that. There's just one option there. There's no prenatal services. There's no adoption referrals. There's no material services or OBGYN services there. There are other places that do provide that. And if we can get that information out, and that community, for those who don't know, is growing, and it's huge, and it's way bigger than most people think because they're not in the community. But in Tallahassee, the Women's Pregnancy Center provides all of that to these women. Yeah. And then also, I think just being in that position where I was faced with a crisis pregnancy and I had to make that choice. I was not doing well. I was depressed. I had very little income. I had just met my husband. I had 3 older children. And I had to go, okay, well, it would have been really easy in that moment to go, I have all the reasons, all the stereotypical reasons. But did God ordain that life or not? He did. And that's not my choice to eliminate it. And so now I have that also that, Ford is here because of the result of my decision. And so I want to empower other women that they can do the same thing. Right. Our society says that you can't be successful with lots of children, and having babies will ruin your life, and children will keep you from doing what you were meant to do. And that is not true. It's not true. We can still be successful and have a family and have lots of kids, and we can do it all.
You've done it twice.
Yeah. Well, and I've had 4 kids.
That's right.
Yeah. So I want women to feel empowered that they can do that. Now, again, this is all said in love. There's no condemnation.
Sure.
I have made so many mistakes in my life, and hey, it's still legal, right? At the end of the day. But we want women to feel like they have those options and that they're fully informed and that they can bring a life in. My mom was adopted. I wouldn't be here if somebody had not adopted my mother. My husband's mother was adopted. We both came from adoptive
Wow.
situations. Now, if it had been just a few years later, probably neither of us would be here because the choice would have been a different one for both of their mothers.
Just 2 more questions. First one, looking back, what is one thing or person that changed or altered the trajectory of your life to this point?
I would say the first would be what I mentioned earlier with my dad. Just know he was such a gentle man, but so he stood by what he believed. He's the one that instilled in me just these strong core values. And after my life was falling apart, after his death, he was really still within me saying, okay, this would not please me, and this does not please God. And that's what caused me to do a 180. My faith, and, it hasn't always been perfect. Of course, that's part of being a Christian. But, a defining moment also came, and a turnaround also came for me when I realized what grace really was. As a pastor's kid, you grow up like it has to look perfect, be perfect. You have to, be in this role of perfection. And I tried really hard my whole life to be that. And then when I fell from grace, I got to really get an intimate view of what it looks like to need God's love and forgiveness. And so I know now what, of course, redemption looks like. And I know that through the death of my dad and all of that situation, God really redeemed the situation. He can redeem any situation for anybody and forgive anything. And that it's not about what we do and our behaviors and how perfect we are. And I think that's relieving.
Right.
It's relieving
for
me. Yeah.
Did that change the way you look at yourself or think about yourself?
Yeah, because I thought I was so perfect before, and that there was no wrong. And, I know that I've made a lot of mistakes and that God still loved me. Because I tell you what, after my divorce, I did not think that. And I remember sitting at the back of the church and thinking, I don't even deserve to be here. And then I would remember thinking, yes, you do, because we're all saved by grace. And so I think that was probably a turning point too in my life, that I realized that you need it just as much as everybody else. Because when you grow up as a pastor's kid, it's very performance based. And Christianity can become performance based for people, and behaviors and rituals and stuff like that. And that's not what it's about. It's about a relationship and our need for God. Not his need for us. So anyway, I would say that was a big turning point for me too. And that helped me to see that I am nobody special. And even now, and I may be back to the role that I had before, there ain't nothing special about me. I mean, really, at the end of the day, I'm just the same as everybody else. And I tell myself that all the time. You ain't nobody special, Lisa, and I think that's good, because you have to have that kind of, view. We're all humans. And I think also going through a lot of loss will bring you there. You've lost a lot. You are not exempt.
All right. So, Lisa, the name of this podcast is How I Got Here. So we've talked about how you got to this point in your life. Where do you think here might be for you 3 to 5 years from now?
That's a really tough question, because I don't feel the attachments that I used to feel to companies anymore. So it would be more like watching my children graduate from high school and college over the next few years. So for the kids, being there for them for that and making it the best I can. I've got one a senior right now, and I am want this year to be fantastic, over the top, even with everything that's going on, and make sure that all her needs are provided for. And same thing for my others, watching them grow up. I really think about it in terms of that, because things could change with my vacation anytime. And so I really have very little, I could decide tomorrow to start a marketing and branding company and go do that. So I know whatever I do, I'll bring the same values, principles, and work ethic there. So I'm not as concerned about what I'm doing as much as I am providing the best for my kids in the next few years.
That was Lisa Davis. Since we recorded this episode, Lisa has launched an extension of her brand with Jennifer Powell Photography. It is a boutique-style studio in Northeast Tallahassee's Market Square, next to the Paint and Palette. Lisa describes it as a one-stop shop for all things image, including spray tanning, makeup sales, classes, and application, plus professional photography from branding to headshots. I encourage you to check it out. Thanks for listening to the show. You can subscribe at Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, please leave us a review. It really does make a difference. Thanks to my amazing staff at Fiore Communications, who pick up the slack while I'm working on these podcasts, and to Troy Bloom for composing our theme music. You can hear more of Troy's creations on Facebook and Instagram at Troy Bloom Music. To connect with the podcast or suggest a future guest, follow us on social media or email us at podcast@fiorecommunications.com.